auf einen Melange mit dem Process Wizard.
Dear Gianluca, welcome on a Melange with the Process Wizard.
Thank you for having me. And what are you drinking?
So I'm drinking, of course, a black coffee. It's called in Vienna you would say verlängerter, which is
Mm.
literally translated a lengthen one
Oh,
because it's espresso, which is lengthen with hot water.
I think it's what people would call Americano, right?
Yeah, so it's a kind of Americano, but usually in Americano you put very much hot water on it.
Got it.
But with the lengthen one, it's a little bit less. So you have much more taste of the coffee itself.
Cool. I was just wondering. I'm drinking decaffeinated tea, in case you're wondering.
Awesome, awesome, perfect. So Gianluca, so usually on podcasts there is a big introduction of the guest, but as we are on a coffee table, and usually I do not invite every stranger to my coffee table. I just wanted to ask you if you can remember when we both the first time met.
I do. I remember. I think it was the first lecture of the Master in Prompt Engineering, this AI program that you've joined. I don't remember if we met before. Did we?
No, it was
It
actually
was
the
the first
first
time.
time,
Yeah.
but it's kind of funny because I think you're my first guest, which
Mhm.
I have kind of met already way before because
Mhm.
I have so I'm receiving your newsletter, your Tech Pizza newsletter, which is
Oh.
awesome. I have done the AI fundamentals course before, so I have seen you in videos, etc. So really personally, we have met in the first live session of
Yeah.
the Master
And
in Prompt
actually,
Engineering.
I have to share that the during that first session of that program, there's this activity that we do together, which is about breaking down a process into different steps. And I remember, so I am the teacher in that setting, and I remember that I saw because we do the Miro, and so we can see how everybody's doing the task. And then when I saw you doing the task, and I think you also kind of made some comments about it, I thought, damn, this guy's way better than me at doing this. So what am I gonna do now? I didn't know that I had in the class somebody who was actually an expert in that specific thing. And it was funny because I tried to make it very simple for everybody, but for you, it was just like way too simple. It was a fun it was a fun situation to be in.
Um, so spare your words because I have the feeling we will talk about it soon. Um, Besides that, I'm the process wizard. Maybe that's why it was kind of easy for me, this task, because I just had to move my wand a little bit. But as I'm the process wizard, I would like to have a similar acronym for you too.
Hmm.
Do you have some in your mind? Because, of course, I have thought about it before.
Oh, you're interesting. I want to know what you think about it. Yeah, so it's so hard to give yourself an acronym. I think there's a few people who called me the AI Rockstar for a couple of different reasons. I have long hair. I love metal and rock and blues and a bunch of different genres. And for people who are not watching the video but just listening to the audio, I have a bunch of guitars hanging on the wall in the back of my home office. And so I think the AI Rockstar is something that comes up to different people have this nickname, but I haven't adopted it. Maybe I should. Maybe I just start saying, "Hey, I'm Gianluca the AI Rockstar. How's it going?" I don't know. What did you
Yeah.
think about?
So AI Rockstar is awesome, and I would be totally fine if we go with AI Rockstar. I would I just so my idea sounds a little bit weak now. I would have said AI Wizard because I'm the process wizard and you're
Fair
the
enough.
AI Wizard. But AI Rockstar is awesome, really really awesome,
Yeah, it's cool.
perfect. So AI Rockstar, welcome on
Process
my
wizard.
coffee table.
Nice to be here.
Perfect. So then let's start with a really cool discussion where we try to combine AI with process management, which is awesome actually. And as you mentioned before in the introduction, so in your course, but also in your book Zero to AI, um, the topic of process management plays a very important role.
Yeah.
And I just want to talk with you because you have a lot of experience with companies want to implement AI or create somehow an AI product.
Mhm.
Why do you think process management or business process management is so crucial for this part? Exactly.
Yeah, so it's actually interesting because I did not. So my background is in engineering, but I think I never studied process management per se. So meaning that nobody has ever given me a lecture and the title on the slide was process management 101, you know. But when I started doing consulting, and I found myself doing consulting kind of by chance, really by chance. Like I got my first job was as a consultant. I was not sure what a consultant was, but anyway, and I started just doing AI projects, and I have a very practical approach to things, to life in general. I came from the startup ecosystem, and I was suddenly thrown into a corporation, and I remember thinking this very obvious thing, which is, well, if I'm doing AI, you're paying me to do something. This thing has to work, right? It doesn't
Yeah.
have to be just a nice PowerPoint presentation. Like whatever the hell we're gonna end up building has to be used. It has to bring value to people. And so how do you do that? Well, you need to understand how your business works so that we know that this thing is gonna fit into how your business works. And so then I thought about, okay, what are your processes? Like how does this how do you do what you do today, and how are we envisioning this in the future? And the first job that I had was in this pharmaceutical company, and I was so blessed that the my boss at the time, who was the director of commercial operations in this company. So his name is Giorgio Vinci, amazing human and executive, super good mentor. He just gave me so much freedom to experiment and to ask questions. And he just made me understand how I needed to, especially in the pharmaceutical industry, to understand how all these different pieces fit together: the company, the doctor, the patient, the payer, the insurance, so many different things. And I think at some point I was trying to, when I switched from consulting to training, because I realized at some point that I actually cared more about teaching people than writing code for them. um, I just thought about how can I make it simple for people to do this thing that I do subconsciously? Because you realize that I subconsciously was analyzing those processes and trying to turn them into different steps, right? And
Mhm.
I just came up with a few of my own frameworks, let's say, which then I figured out that these things were actually pretty basic process management in the end of the day. But so I
Yeah.
had to kind of reconstruct these things based on how I intuitively was doing those tasks.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the story of how I got to think about processes. But yeah, really the the reason why process management is so important is because so many consultants focus on the technology, their single bit. So I'm paid to be an AI consultant. I'm gonna focus on AI. But then if you don't think about everything else, your AI bit is just gonna fail. You know?
Yeah. So it's and that's what I really like on your thoughts. So in the book as well in the course actually, because it really felt as you want to kind of deliver a sustainable approach of using AI.
Yeah.
Because, for example, I experienced a company when, so end of last year, beginning of this year, when this AI hype with ChatGPT
Hmm.
had a very big race, they kind of pronounced publicly, okay, we will spend 10 million euros for the AI topic in general, and we will do everything to make AI usable in our company. But at the end of the day, nothing happened because it was so there were initiatives kind of, okay, every employee shall take 2 hours per week and just shall look what he can do with the AI tools which are on the market. So that stuff. And kind of sad actually, because it was a really very cool start because the C level decided, okay, we jump on this AI train and we want to be leader in our industry of using AI tools or even creating AI tools, but there was no definite goal they defined.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, yeah, it makes so much sense. So much sense. And in the end of the day, I like to see AI as a tool. I always use this metaphor. I say AI is like a hammer. You know, by itself, it makes like it's not useful, but you can use it to build a table, to make a statue, to assemble IKEA furniture, whatever you want to do. And then the value is in the output, is not in the tool that you use to reach that output. But a lot of people focus so much on the tool, you know. And I remember when I spent some time of my life in Silicon Valley, and I remember somebody told me people don't buy a drill because they want a drill. They buy a drill because they want a hole in the wall. That's what they want. And so then I ended up thinking a lot about the why we do things. Why do you want to use AI? Why do you want to have these projects? What is your pain? What is the value? Like, let's talk about this. Um, and I think a lot of people are usually weirded out. It's kind of weird, right? Like you spend a bunch of money to buy an AI course, and I wait. I think probably 30% in of the program to start talking about AI. The first 30% we talk about something else. And people are like, what the hell? Like, where's the AI? And I'm like, I always say these things. I say, a problem well defined is a problem half solved. So most of the AI projects that I saw that failed didn't fail because of the technology. They failed because you did not consider something in the scenario in which this AI thing is going to be used. So you to use this the metaphor of the hammer, your hammer was really good. You used it really well, but you built a table when you needed something to sit on. You were supposed to build a chair. Sorry, I don't know if I can swear on this podcast. Too late, I guess. But you understand. You
yeah,
understand
so,
the you
so
understand
I
the
know
point.
what you
You know?
mean, and it's really funny because there's so many things which align with general knowledge from different very successful methods. So, for example, one of the things you usually say when you're investigating or analyzing a process is, okay, first of all, you look at the job which must be done.
Yeah.
So you don't care about the tools which are used, the steps which are taken. First of all, you say, okay, why are you doing this process? What is the job to be done? Because then you really can think about, okay, are we efficient? Are we approaching a direct way, or do we have, I don't know, loops using the hammer for um, how is it called? Drilling in screws
Yeah. Yeah.
instead of nails, that stuff. The other thing is, and that's really interesting, and it's really interesting because I haven't learned it from, that's kind of sad, I haven't learned it from my process management experience.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I've learned it from the design sprint method.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, first of all, you really have to define, analyze, understand the problem to be solved.
Mm-hmm.
And when you have this, the next steps are so much more easier because you
Yeah.
know, okay, where is the problem? Why do we have this problem? Who is involved? So also the stakeholders or the participants which are involved are very necessary to know. So that stuff.
Yeah. And oh boy, I have a story about this. I have so many stories about this problem specifically. But I can tell you the first project I've done in the pharmaceutical industry, it was so interesting because this, without getting into the details, the project that I developed, it worked technically. It was really good. And it was all about this idea that we could identify patients who needed additional support for the therapy, who were struggling with it, and then we could help them basically and just call them up and say, hey, looks like you need, I don't know, a nurse to come visit you and help you. And so the whole thing worked out. The whole process was perfect. And then we realized that there was this tiny little problem. Then when they sent, because it was happened 5 years before, the consent, the privacy consent to those patients, they did not ask for the permission to actively contact them. Tiny little detail, very tiny detail. We had the permission to use their data. We had the permission to do all those things. We did not have the permission to take the phone and make a phone call. And so what happened is that in the beginning, we tried to see, well, let's just wait for these patients to call. And when they call, we tell them, by the way, it looks like you may be in need of an additional support for your therapy. But obviously, this was not very helpful, because the patients that were in need of support, by definition, were not calling because they were kind of left out from the systems. It's a bit of a complicated problem that we're trying to deal with. But anyway, just to give you an idea, forgetting about the little part of the story led us to, I think, 1 year and a half of waiting time to draft a new contract, a new privacy policy, and I don't remember the specific name of this document. Send it to everybody, wait for their consent to come in, and then you can use the thing. So think about this. The technology worked. The pain was clearly defined. The stakeholders were clearly defined, except legal, maybe, except the right people in legal, I would say, because some people in legal obviously look at this, but from a data privacy point of view, not from some other weird regulatory point of views. So we missed one key thing, and that meant a year and a half of waiting time just to get that single thing to work. So I think very often when I'm talking to customers or to students, and I stress so much how much they need to think about the process and just really understand it, they think I'm boring because I'm like, I keep asking questions and I keep asking, who is, every time somebody mentions a person or a job description who's involved in a problem, I'm like, I want to talk to this person. It's like, oh, but are you sure it's not that relevant? I'm like, that's what you think. But let's figure it out. Let's validate it. Let's have a conversation. If this person is not relevant, then we cross it out of the list of the stakeholders. But first, let's have a conversation, because I think I'm being burnt by that first project in which everything was great until one little thing, and
Yeah,
then
but actually that's very important because usually you only learn because of failures.
yeah,
So why do we fall? To learn how to pick ourselves up.
no,
And
yeah,
now
exactly.
you never will forget it anymore.
Yeah,
Actually,
I hope so. Yeah, but yeah, that was super valuable. Um, yeah, but that's the funny thing. I learned all these concepts by actually just doing stuff. Because I think in my main degree in engineering, there was not much of this. These concepts were not taught to us. Engineering, especially in Italy, I think it's very traditional in terms of here's the thermodynamics and here are all the equations and this is how physics works and all this stuff. But there's not a lot of empathy, because this is really about empathy if you think about it. It's
yeah,
about
totally,
it's,
totally. And I think it's one of the main issues of universities in general, that they are very theoretical.
yeah.
So I started studying at the technical university in Vienna, and it for me personally it was way too theoretical.
Mm,
That's why I moved into University of Applied Science,
mm.
where you had to do much more projects and real practical stuff.
Yeah, because these things you really just learn them by doing them and by actually being in front of people. It was actually a funny. I'm curious to know what you think about this. Today, I started teaching at this program for a university in Stockholm, um, and those students are going to. It's called the AI Business Consultant Program. So these guys are going to learn how to be business consultants, but specifically to AI. Makes sense. Okay, I don't have to explain it. Um, and the first project is going to be about building a project for our customer, for our client, that is going to go and say, these are my problems. And so I said, okay, guys, the first thing that you need to do is read this book about how to ask questions. And they were like, what the hell? Like, are we going to talk about ChatGPT and generative AI? And I'm like, wait, yeah, sure. Later. First, learn how to ask questions. And that to me was something I never thought it was going to be that hard. The art of asking questions to kind of uncover hidden issues in processes and in business problems. Have you ever encountered that? Like the
Yeah,
issue in how to actually get information of somebody else.
yeah, totally. So and I think there are several problems. First of all, nowadays, as we, especially in business, mainly talk with each other per email or Discord or Slack or whatsoever, it's much harder because you cannot, you would have to write so much text if you really want to get to know the problem. Secondly, it's so much harder to build trust, because when you have to imagine, when you go to a process participant or to a customer whatsoever, and want to know about his problems, about his wishes, about his perception of a specific product, you really want him to open in front of you, so that he also has to say negative stuff, he can say positive stuff, he has to share his feelings, his views, etc. And it's a kind of personal thing, and that it's very important to build trust as soon as possible. So, and this is almost impossible with, so via email, via Slack,
Yep.
etc. It's a little bit easier to reach via phone, but perfect way is personally.
Mm.
And you can ask, let's say this way, you can ask much more wrong questions than correct or right questions. Do you know what I mean? And that's why
Yep.
there are I don't know, thousands of books. And
Yep.
sadly, this is also nothing you usually learn automatically at the university, because because I also read a lot of books about it, and those were books I bought myself,
Yep.
so in private.
Yeah, I did a little bit about this in when I studied in Silicon Valley. I did this short 6 months, very intense business and administration, business entrepreneurship program, I guess it was called. And we had a lesson about negotiation, and that was one of the first lectures in which I had an idea of, yeah, this is not easy. Um, but then I think that the one of the most important experiences I had is I hired a friend of mine who is a senior salesperson who retired very early because he was like, enough, I don't want to work anymore. And I was like, hey, listen, do you have some spare time to help me and our partnership lead to understand, to get better at sales, just have more processes and figure things out. And he had a couple of less lectures on asking questions. And oh my God, like I just realized so many things that I was just doing wrong. And I just want to give you one example that I think makes sense in the specific context of like process, just understanding processes. So he came up with this exercise, okay, and he wrote four descriptions of four different um, apartments in Copenhagen, and our job was to understand which apartment to propose him to buy. So we had to interview him, and we need to understand, what was his ideal apartment. And this is gonna make sense very soon in our context, okay? Because it sounds like, oh, you're just learning how to sell stuff to people. What is the link? It's coming. Bear with me. And so at some point, we asked him about what is important for him. So in his normal life, what are the things he does that are important for him? And he said, well, I travel a lot. I was like, okay, cool. So how does that apply to the house choosing problem? And he said, well, it's very important for me that the airport is close to my house. And so I understood this. It needs to be close to your house. And we had the time to the airport of each one of these apartments, and it went from 10 minutes to 45 minutes. And so instinctively, I thought it's very important for him that it's close. What am I going to do? I'm going to cut the 45 minutes one. Okay. And so this is very classic. When somebody tells you this is important for me, then you make an assumption of what important means. And in my case, important meant 10 minutes. And then, he taught me to dig deeper into those assumptions that I made. And then he said, and so I asked him, can you define what not a lot means, what close means? And he said, oh, I come from London. So for me, anything less than an hour and a half, it's really good. I was like, damn, I was about to cross off my list like 2 apartments out of 4 under my assumption that your process of going to the airport needed a 15 minutes, 30 minutes max range, whereas that was not true. I just made an assumption. And so this thing of asking questions, this was a simple question. What does not a lot mean to you? Can you put a number? just change completely the situation. And I think I'm using this, so we learned in the context of sales, when people say, oh, it's very important for me that, I don't know, this course is cheap. I'm like, okay, can you define what a cheap course is? For some people it's $10, for some other people it's 1,000, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So,
totally.
but like also when I started doing other consulting projects, I started, incorporating those question asking techniques. And then when people start saying, oh no, it's very important the system is accurate, what does that mean? Are you okay with 10 errors out of 100? This is also very interesting, by the way, in AI specifically. People say, oh, no, no, it needs to be perfect. And I'm like, okay, how accurate is your current decision making process? And they don't know. And so then you ask them, well, let's assume that we benchmark your decision making process, and this new AI thing is not perfect, but it's better. Would you use it? And then they're like, well, yeah, then I will use it because it's better than me. But so asking those deeper questions and nailing, kind of going deep into what people are saying, which is, it's an art, as I was saying before, but really helps you, I think, anything you're doing, whether it's selling or whether it's understanding a process, because in the end of the day, everything is a process, right?
Yeah,
Some,
that's the funny thing. So there's no such thing like we do not have any process yet, because if you would not have any process, you would do literally do nothing at all.
Exactly. So your brain may have a subconscious process and you don't know about it. Which is, by the way, the funniest and hardest thing to do. It's when people say, "Oh, how do you create posts for social media?" Oh, I sit down and I write. I'm like, no, that's not true. Let's just go into your brain. What happens? Oh, I think about what went well last week. Okay, step number one. Then what do you do? Oh, I pick the topics that I covered that got the most likes. Okay, step number two. And then I think about what other angles could work for my audience. Step number three. Here we go. There's a process. You don't realize it, but it happens subconsciously. And that's super important.
Totally.
I think anything you're
And
doing.
and usually in process management, there's or I think it's even used in project management, for also for risk management and that stuff. You
Mhm.
have this 5 why question.
Yeah.
So you ask 5 times why to really come to the reason of the problem, to the origin of the problem, and the very perfect, so the high class expert consultants, they 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 have the ability to ask questions, to just ask questions, and customer will tell them everything,
Yep.
anything. And that's the really important thing, I guess, on a um, emotional level, kind of, because
Mm.
when you get, so you as a person, you love to tell stuff,
Mm.
and there's nothing much more enjoyable, I think, when another expert comes to you and asks you a question, because you have the knowledge, you
Yeah.
can share your knowledge. Do you know what I mean? It's a
Yeah, I
kind
know.
of I'm proud about it, that he comes to me and is asking me instead of telling me what I have to do.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think you're so right. And by the way, the why questions are sometimes. I still remember I was in this meeting with a friend of mine who was an expert in change management, and I introduced him to one of my clients, and he just said the first question he asked is, "Can I ask you why AI?" And I was like, "What the hell? Why are you asking this? Like, obviously AI, right?" And my client was like, "Oh, this is a really good question." And he went on a journey to talk about how his management decided to change the company's kind of like decision making processes, why it didn't work before, etc., etc. And I was like, I never asked this, because people come to me and say, "Hey, I want to invest in AI," and I'm like, "Okay, cool. Tell me about what are your goals, blah blah blah." But I never asked, why do you want to do AI? Which is it's so basic,
Awesome.
right? You know?
And
Uh,
it is awesome. It's also very helpful for oneself to know, okay, why I'm doing this stuff.
yeah,
You cannot imagine how often I'm asked myself, Christoph, why are you doing this vodcast thing? Because you're getting no money for it. You exchange this time I spent here with the vodcast with having time with my baby girls.
yeah.
So you really have to know your why, because otherwise, so it's the kind of motivation thing to know, okay, I'm doing this because of this.
Yeah, Absolutely. And I think if I can give another tip, like questions that I learned that are super powerful, is tell me the last time you, etc., etc. So people say, why do I do this podcast? Because I don't know, I get business opportunities out of it. Cool. Tell me the last time you got a business opportunity out of it. A lot of times people end up, thinking about like, shit, actually, or because it's fun. Cool. Tell me last time you had a really great, fun conversation with somebody. I don't know. Maybe your answer is right now. I had a very good conversation, and then you know it. But it turns out that when you ask, tell me the last time you, people sometimes realize that actually they lied to your face.
Yeah, it's especially when it's about their work.
Yeah,
That's the very sad
yeah,
thing. That's really
yeah.
sad, actually.
It's so sad. There was a client I had once that said they said the most important thing for them in education is speed. Trainings need to be fast and need to happen immediately. I was like, okay, cool. Tell me last time you did a training. Oh, we did a training on, I don't know, the blockchain. Cool. How long did it take for you to decide to do the training? So I think it took us 6 months to find a partner and then 3 months to organize. I'm like, that's not very fast. And so, like this is another question that I learned from my friend Ross on like, oh Jesus Christ, this changes everything. And he's telling me the last time you did this,
Yeah.
and I think also for us personally, why do you do this podcast? Why do you do this podcast, Christopher?
So I'm really doing this to share the knowledge, which is kind of cre- created or developed
Mhm.
during discussions with colleagues, with friends of mine, because that's
Nice.
awesome, actually.
Yeah, I can see that. I can definitely empathize with that. I understand it.
Gianluca, I'm really sorry, but when I'm looking on my cup, it's empty.
Yeah, mine too. There's like a
And
little
we
sip. It's
we we
cold also.
slowly we slowly come to an end. First of all, so before we finally ending this, you have to know one thing about me. So one of my main mind life mottos is life is not only about taking, but also about giving.
Hmm.
And you have given me now, uh, I have taken from you half an hour of time, which is kind of costly, I think. But you also have given me your knowledge, your wisdom, which was awesome. And that's why I also want to give you something. So
Ooh.
I have prepared a gift, and you
Oh.
even can choose which one.
I'm gonna go the one on my right, so your left.
So this one.
Yes, correct.
Perfect.
Oh
Let's
wow, love
see.
this. That's a big surprise.
Ooh, it's a book. So you will get a book from me. Do you want to know which book, I guess?
I kind of want to know. Yeah.
And I want to give you subject. So the book is called Subject Oriented Business Process Management.
Uh huh.
It's a book which was written by my former supervisor of my master thesis, and he's in my opinion, he's a business process management genius. And it's a lot about, okay, we have to put the human beings, the process participants, again into the center of business process management. And I think it's quite fun for you to just read into it, to gain a little bit of more business process management knowledge.
I feel like it's gonna resonate a lot actually with the stuff that we talked about. So I'm really looking forward to reading it. Thank you. I
Perfect.
love
You're
this.
welcome.
It's really cool. I
You're
think I'm
welcome.
gonna steal this idea for our podcast, probably.
Um, I don't know how long I can afford this. Jokes aside, Gianluca, I thank you so much for your time. It is a big honor for me actually to have you on my coffee table. It was super fun talking with you, super enjoyable, and I wish you a perfect, a successful week ahead.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me, and I hope this was valuable for the listeners.
Of course. See you around. Thank
Bye.
you.
Auf einen Melange mit dem Process Wizard.